So Charles Barkley had some thoughts recently on the Knicks and what direction Mike Brown might take with this newly constructed roster. During the show, someone asked, based on how things stand right now, who Barkley thinks Coach Brown would lean towards starting. Not necessarily a prediction, but more of an educated guess given his knowledge of the roster and Brown's tendencies. Now, according to Barkley, he'd be a bit surprised if Mike Brown decided to go with a traditional two-big lineup featuring both Mitchell Robinson and Karl Anthony Towns. That said, he did acknowledge that the idea isn't totally out of the question. He joked, in his usual way, that back when Gobert got traded to Minnesota, he asked a former coach who Towns would guard, and the answer was classic. Same guy he always guards, nobody. So that tells you how Barkley views Towns defensively. But he did add something important. If there's any big in the league who can cover up for Towns' defensive gaps, it's Mitchell Robinson. So pairing them might actually work if Robinson stays healthy and continues to anchor the paint the way he has. It's not a lock, but it's an option that makes more sense than people might realize at first glance. Then Barkley pointed out something that came up during the Knicks' free agency discussions. Apparently, part of the conversation with one of the recent additions involved his ability to back up both Robinson and Towns off the bench. That seemed to signal that, at least internally, the Knicks might be leaning toward starting both bigs. Of course, Mike Brown hadn't even been officially hired at that point, so the final call is still his. But it was telling that this concept of a double big lineup was already being talked about before he even stepped into the building. Then Charles transitioned to another question from a Knicks fan, asking about Mitchell Robinson's role under Mike Brown. Specifically, should the Knicks look at load-managing Mitch during the regular season to ensure he's 100% for the playoffs? Now, Barkley had some thoughts on that too. He started by shouting out the fan who asked the question, clearly someone who's followed the team closely. Then he said, "If we're being honest, reducing Mitch's minutes just a bit could be smart. Maybe not running him for a full 30 every night, more like 24 to 25 minutes to keep him fresh." But he was also adamant that they shouldn't be overly cautious or treat Mitch like he's made of glass. In Barkley's view, overmanaging Robinson can throw the whole team out of rhythm, and it happened a little bit this past year when Mitch was coming back from injury and skipping back-to-back. He thinks it hurt the team's continuity. So his suggestion is more about maintaining a consistent, manageable minutes load, rather than resting him randomly or holding him out of key stretches. That led into a broader point about health, something Barkley emphasized as one of the biggest X factors for any contending team. He gave the Knicks credit for mostly avoiding major injuries last season, especially when you compare them to other teams who lost key players at the worst time. But he cautioned that this kind of luck doesn't always hold up. So, whatever the Knicks do with Mitch or anyone else, they'll need to be proactive, smart, and maybe just a little lucky to make it deep in the playoffs. Then to wrap things up, Barkley responded to a YouTube comment about Giannis Antetokounmpo's recent remarks. You might have seen the headline. Giannis said in an overseas interview something along the lines of, "We'll see," when asked about staying with the Bucks long-term. Barkley addressed that directly and added some context. According to him, even after the Bucks traded for Miles Turner, most people he's talked to still believe Giannis is more likely to leave than stay. The Turner move was solid, but it wasn't the kind of needle mover that makes Giannis say, "Okay, we're back in title contention." Barkley said the vibe he's getting from those around the league is that this has been trending for a while. Giannis possibly exploring a new chapter somewhere else. Now, obviously, the Bucks don't have a lot of room to make major moves. Their flexibility is super limited right now, so unless they've got something major cooking behind the scenes, it's hard to imagine they can drastically reshape the roster enough to change Giannis's mind. That was Barkley's main takeaway. Even though Milwaukee made a move, it may not be enough to keep their franchise cornerstone from looking elsewhere down the line. Barkley continued the discussion by circling back to the Giannis situation in Milwaukee. He said what's really standing out to him is how there's been no public reaffirmation of Giannis's long-term commitment to the Bucks. No renewing the vows, as he put it. That vague comment Giannis made, "We'll see," tells Barkley that the superstar is clearly weighing his options. And from the Knicks' point of view, Barkley said they along with probably 28 other teams, are definitely watching this situation unfold. They're not alone in that. Everyone's waiting to see if Giannis eventually becomes available, or if Milwaukee can hold on to him with their current roster. Then Charles threw in a wrinkle that's easy to overlook: the Mikal Bridges extension. He said if the Knicks extend Bridges, they would be handcuffed from trading him for a significant stretch, around 6 months. That matters because if they were to try and swing a deal for someone like Giannis, they'd need as many tradable assets as possible. Extending Bridges too early would eliminate that option and potentially force them into looking at someone like OG Anunoby or even Karl Anthony Towns as trade centerpieces instead. Definitely something to monitor in the coming weeks. Now, the next topic shifted to how Coach Mike Brown might approach Bridges' role if the roster stays relatively intact. And according to Barkley, this could be an opportunity for a big turnaround. He said it straight. Mikal was clearly frustrated at times last season with how he was used. Too often, he was just parked in the corner waiting for something to happen, rarely involved in creative sets or featured within the offense. Barkley believes Brown could absolutely unlock a new level for Mikal if Bridges also meets the moment, because Charles didn't pull any punches. He said Mikal has to stop being scared of the paint. Too many times last season, instead of attacking the rim, he settled for fading away from it. Barkley gave an example from the Pacers series where Mikal caught a long pass, and instead of taking it in strong for a layup, he pulled it out and went with a turnaround jumper. That's just not going to cut it. That said, Barkley thinks Brown's offense can bring out the best in him. Mike Brown has said himself that he adjusts his system based on his personnel, and that's something Barkley really respects. In his opinion, with a little creativity and better usage, Bridges could be far more effective under this new coaching staff if he plays with more aggression. After that, Barkley reacted to a few updates from YouTube viewers, including a fan asking about the Knicks' rumored interest in Ben Simmons, Russell Westbrook, and the possibility of bringing back Landry Shamet or Delon Wright. He was pretty clear. The Simmons chatter hasn't gone away. Barkley said he's been told those talks have remained active, even as recently as a few days ago. As for Westbrook, Charles said he's hearing more buzz out of Sacramento than New York at this point. He noted that the Kings have reportedly had real interest in Russ, especially because of the energy and edge he can bring to a locker room. But here's the catch: they're stacked with guards. So, unless they make some moves to clear space, there may just not be a roster spot available for him yet. In terms of the Knicks, Barkley seemed skeptical about how Westbrook would fit. With the rotation likely set at 9 guys, he questioned where exactly Russ would slot in and whether there'd be a meaningful role for him. His guess? If the Knicks do add someone in that spot, it's more likely to be someone like Simmons or possibly Shamet, who has reportedly remained on their radar. Barkley said he checked in again recently and was told there's still mutual interest there between Shamet and the Knicks. Then the conversation pivoted slightly to a more philosophical take. What types of players Mike Brown gravitates toward? Barkley pointed out that while there's no true archetype for Brown, there are traits he clearly values. He brought up Draymond Green as a perfect example, not because he expects to find another Draymond, but because of what Draymond represents: high IQ, versatility, and the ability to impact the game on both ends of the floor. Barkley believes Brown sees the value in multi-dimensional players, guys who can defend multiple positions, make smart decisions with the ball, and don't need plays called for them to make an impact. He noted that in Sacramento, Brown tried to mold Domantas Sabonis into a playmaking big, someone who could function in that same connective tissue role that Draymond thrives in. So expect similar expectations in New York. And finally, Barkley ended the segment by saying he thinks Brown is going to really like some of the defensive-minded wings already on the Knicks roster. Guys who can switch, fight through screens, and hold their ground. Those are going to earn a lot of minutes. Because while Brown will tailor his offense to his personnel, his standard on the defensive end doesn't waver. That's what wins in this league.